Hello guys, welcome to a new video of the Fischer series. Today we're looking at round number 12 of the Zurich Interzonal held in 1959. It's Fischer against Keres. Keres is a top Soviet grandmaster during that time. Fischer is yet to beat one. He drew against Michael Tal. This is now his second attempt. He has the white pieces. Tournament is going great so far, so he really wants to win. And let's just see how the game goes. Fischer starts with e4. Until now, well, basically he always starts with e4. So e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and bishop to b5, the Spanish opening. Now we have the Morphy defense with a6, bishop to b4, and knight f6. Fischer castles, bishop to e7. So I'm going a bit quick because this is all theory. Rook to e1, b5, bishop to b3, d6 making way for the bishop. Now c3 making way for our bishop and preparing d4 push. Castles h3 to prevent the pieces coming to g4. Knight a5 kicking the bishop, bishop to c2 and c5. So the purpose of knight to a5 is also to make way for the c pawn. But Fischer strikes back in the center with d4. Main line goes queen to c7. Knight b to d2, so we reroute the knight to f1 to e3, and then it can jump to d5 or f5. C takes, so you can see the purpose of queen c7 is to take a lot of control over the c line now. And now Keres plays bishop to b7, so you can either play bishop to d7 or b7. Fischer now continues his plan with knight to f1. Rook a to c8, so you see we have a lot of control over the c line. Bishop to d3 because it was attacked twice, and now knight to c6. And this, now we're out of theory, and well, knight to c6 is a bit of an interesting move because now Fischer can actually play d5, kick away this knight with tempo. This bishop will look at this pawn structure. The knight has to move again, either to a7, d8 or to b4. Well, if you come to b4, we simply play bishop to b1, and this knight is stranded here. Where is it going? Well, we have to play a5 to make way for the knight. After bishop to d2, you cannot come in here, even though it looks like we can. Because after bishop takes, queen takes, rook takes, we play knight to e3, attack your rook, and it looks like a free pawn on b2, so why not take it? Well, after taking, your rook is actually trapped. Where's your rook going? Everything is defended here. So you cannot take the pawn. You would have to play rook to c8 back, and now we win your pawn, and we're a pawn up. So you cannot come in. You would have to play knight to a6 and then reroute it again. We will simply play queen to e2. We attack this pawn. You have to push. Now we play a3. And you can really overextend like this because then we just open it up like this and it's just better for white. But okay, that didn't happen. Fischer never played this d5 push, but I just want to show you what the best move here is according to the engine. So after knight to c6, Fischer just thinks, okay, I went for this reroute, I want to complete it with knight to e3. After knight to e3, Keres plays rook f to e8, and now the engine is really screaming for d5 push, to just go for this idea. It's basically the only move to have this real big advantage. But okay, Fischer doesn't see that. He plays knight to f5 to attack the bishop on e7. Bishop comes back, and now bishop to g5. You do not want your pawns to be doubled here, so knight to d7, and now rook to c1. So just look at white's pieces, they're really developing nicely, and black's, Keres's pieces are really cramped here, doing not much, so he has to do something soon. And now with the rook on c1, d5 is even deadlier, because then we either win a piece or win your queen. So Keres here plays queen to b8, and now Fischer just plays a very slow move, bishop to b1, defend this pawn, perhaps a3, bishop to a2, and have control over these files. And we also defend our pawn twice now, or actually 3 times, but the queen is also helping the pawn now. So Keres has to do something about it. He plays knight takes d4, and after knight f3 takes d4, first rook takes c1, bishop takes c1, e takes d4, and here Keres probably expected Fischer to just take the pawn back and be equal in material, but here Fischer finds a brilliant move. I would say pause the video now and try to find this amazing move for Fischer. So the amazing move here is knight h6 check. How does that work? Well, after g takes h6, we have queen to g4, forking the knight and the king. King has to move and we win the knight back. And just look at black's pawns, how shattered they are. And look at our pawns, very healthy, all next to each other. So this is just a way better endgame for Fischer if all the pieces come off the board. So now Keres plays bishop to d5, an interesting move because you cannot take, then the rook is falling. And Keres just wants to bring his bishop back to the king's side to defend his king. Fischer plays queen f4, rook e5, defending the bishop and attacking the queen, queen to f3, and f5, aggressive defense because, well, you're opening the king's side even more, but you're making way for the bishop to come back. Now bishop to f4, rook e8 back, and queen to h5. Here there are actually two good moves. You can also play queen to d1, because after bishop takes, pawn takes, we take d4 pawn with check, bishop to g7, and now queen to b4 to defend the pawn and attack this pawn twice. So that's also possible. But okay, Fischer went for queen to h5 to attack the h6 pawn. Now we have bishop takes e4, and now taking the bishop is not so good because now we have those pawns rolling up the board and we cannot take the d4 pawn immediately. So Fischer here plays the best move, f3. You cannot take the bishop, then I'll take your rook, and well, you cannot take my rook back because it's defended by our queen, and then the bishop will fall and this will lead to mate. So Keres here plays bishop to c6, rook to c1, attacking the bishop, and bishop back to d7. After bishop to d7, Fischer can either play bishop takes f5 or bishop takes h6. Both are possible, but he decides to take the h6 pawn, and after that Keres plays rook to e6, bishop takes, and queen to h4, because on h5 you cannot come back, so you have to bring it to h4 and then come back like this. After queen to h4, Keres plays queen to f6, offering a queen exchange, and Fischer's like, okay, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pawns. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pawns, so you're one pawn up, but look at how shattered those pawns are. Those are doubled. This is a pawn island on f5. h7 pawn is an island, so let's just do it. And after queen takes, rook takes, here Fischer plays king to f2. And in his 60 memorable games, he actually says that this move is a bit of a losing tempo. He says, losing a vital tempo, which gives black time to rush his king towards the center. At the time, I rejected rook to c7 because I couldn't see a winning continuation after rook to f7. But I underestimated the strength of rook to a7. And now you cannot play bishop to c8 to defend the pawn. But after king to f2, king to g7, and now this continuation, now we can play bishop to c8 because the rook is not, it's basically defended. So after bishop to c8, rook takes, king takes, bishop takes. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pawns against 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pawns, and this is basically a draw. So, but the interesting thing is, Keres actually doesn't defend the pawn. Keres here prefers activity. And, well, Soviet Grandmaster players were known to play aggressive, active chess, so he goes for king to f6. And after rook takes a6, it's equal material. Keres gives a check. You cannot come to d2 because then rook to g7 will win. you have to go to f2, and now bishop to e6, giving away another pawn. So Keres just gave away 2 pawns for activity. Fischer's like, fine, let me just take it, I don't mind. King to e5, rook has to move. Well, can we not just move it to b6 to attack another pawn? But that would be too greedy, because now we have bishop to c4, and after b3, trying to kick away the bishop, we actually have d3. And after b takes, those pawns are sufficient enough to draw this game, because they're just too far advanced. So the best move here is just to give away and play the endgame like this. But okay, that didn't happen. Fischer played rook to c6. He's a pawn up. His position is a bit more defensive now, but let's see how the game continues. Bishop to d5, rook to h6, rook to c7, check, check. And still you cannot go for this idea, because then the rook is coming in, bishop has to move, bishop to c4. You cannot take, because this will be a losing endgame. So Fischer gives a check and then tries to go for another pawn. So Fischer is just hunting the pawns. He really loves them, and Keres doesn't really mind. He prefers activity. He brings the rook in, bishop to d3, attacking the bishop, rook to g1, rook to d1. We see some shuffling. Fischer doesn't want to draw. He's a pawn up. He defends the pawn like this now. Bishop takes, rook to b1, king to d3. And here Keres plays h6, which is an interesting move. Better would have been to play rook takes b2. And after rook takes b2, for example, if you take the pawn, now we have bishop to b1 defending our own pawn. And this is a draw, because you cannot take the pawn, the bishop will come back, and this is simply a draw. So Keres actually didn't play that. He played h6, rook to h5, takes, and he felt like taking the g2 pawn is better, but now Fischer's actually a pawn up. 2 pawns against 1 pawn. A bishop, a rook, and a rook. So let's see how the game continues. King to e7, king to e4. We see some pieces shuffling, and this is a really important move, because if you didn't play bishop to c8 and, for example, brought it to f1, now we have rook to h5, and well, this would be really annoying, because this looks really drawish. The king is in time to come in, and this bishop will simply sacrifice itself for the pawn, and you can never win an endgame with a pawn that is the opposite color of the bishop. So if this pawn tries to promote, the king will simply sit on h8, and this light squared bishop of Fischer will never be able to check the black king. So okay, rook to g6. We see some pieces shuffling, and this is a critical error. Well, here, this little difference, if rook takes, king takes, the black king, I should say, makes it in time to come to the dark square on f6. And now this bishop on f7 will be able to sacrifice itself for the f3 pawn, because it has enough time to go on the line of this square. But after rook to h6, rook to g6, now after taking, the king on f8 is too far away. So Fischer is winning now, because after takes, Fischer is the one going to g5 and controlling those dark squares. And well, now Keres cannot do anything. After bringing back the bishop, we've seen his pawns advancing. And you should never advance the pawn here, then it's a draw, because after takes, as you can see, we can never queen this pawn. The black king will just sit there, and well, there's not much we can do here. This is simply a draw. So, okay, how can we advance here then? Well, check, king has to move. Bishop here, if you exchange, then we are winning. Because if you take, we simply win like this. And this is a win for Fischer. So, after some pieces moving, we You can see Fischer finally makes the f5 push. Check, f6, and there's no way for you to defend this position. The king cannot come in. As you can see, we're controlling all those squares. The king has to stay on the back rank. This bishop wants to give itself away for the pawn, but we will just march towards e7, put the bishop on f7 later on, and there's no way for you to give your bishop away for the pawn. For example, after bishop to d5, king here. Now we can play f7 check, takes, and well, after h7 check, this is just lost, as you can see. There's nothing you can do. So after f6, Paul Keres resigned this game, and this was Fischer's first time beating a Soviet grandmaster. I mean, this endgame is really beautiful. Maybe Keres shouldn't have just given away 2 pawns for activity, but even doing that, he could have still drawn the game. Next video, we will see the candidates. It's a very important tournament because the winner will actually play the reigning world champion Michal Botvinnik. Thank you for watching. Like this video, subscribe, leave a comment, and hopefully I'll see you on the next video. Bye bye.